Hi, everyone. I am Amy Vetter, and welcome to the Breaking Beliefs podcast, where anything can be possible, because when you believe you can, you will. This series is all about getting honest with ourselves and noticing the things that we carry with us. We each have our own life experiences to go from, and sometimes it's hard to truly understand what it's like to be someone else. What we can do to create change is to start with us. If each of us took one action each day in our own lives, we could collectively change the world around us. But what does it take? It takes work, it takes practice, and we have to be honest with ourselves as we get there. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs, where I interview Lindsay Wheeler. Lindsay leads the strategic sales team at Bill. She works with the industry's top 100 accounting firms to help them grow their CAS offerings. She has 15 years of experience helping firms automate their clients' back office and in becoming their trusted advisor. Bill is a leader in financial software for small and mid-sized businesses, dedicated to automating the future of finance so businesses can thrive. During this interview with Lindsay, we talk about her journey during childhood and how that journey gave her the skills as an adult to learn from the people around her and lead people effectively by listening before speaking. This episode is sponsored by Bill. Bill is a leader in financial automation software for small and mid-sized businesses, dedicated to automating the future of finance so businesses can thrive. Hundreds of thousands of businesses trust Bill solutions to manage financial workflows, including payables, receivables, and spend and expense management. Lindsay is a great friend of mine. We've known each other for years. I'm so excited for you to hear her journey during this episode. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs. I'm so excited to be here today with my good friend, Lindsay Wheeler from Bill. Lindsay, you want to just give a little background on yourself of who you are and what you do for Bill before we get started?
Sure. Yeah. I run the strategic sales team over here at Bill. So that means I work with the top 100 accounting firms building out their CAS departments, and also, some other nimble firms that are really BPOs, things, firms that are really making space in the industry. And really, we're just trying to automate their whole back office financials.
Awesome. Well, so glad to have you on. And so this podcast is all about our belief systems and kind of the foundation of who we are. So I want to start right in the beginning so our audience can get to know you. So tell me where you began, what your parents did, where you lived, when you grew up, how many siblings you have, and we'll get started there.
Okay. We'll open up the family album. So I grew up half of my childhood in Cincinnati, Ohio. And then in middle school, I moved in 8th grade. So that's a, lovely time to move to Atlanta, Georgia. Just, pivotal years. So I moved to Atlanta, Georgia. I have a younger sister named Courtney. And then my dad, worked for a company in Ohio called Lazarus, if you remember that. They had Lassie Bears and stuff like that.
Yes.
Anyways, they got bought by Riches. And Riches was based out of Atlanta, so we moved. And then they got bought by Macy's. And my dad was like, well, I'm not going to move them to New York. They're a little small town for that. So we stayed in Atlanta. But he ran the men's merchandising department for the Southeast. Okay. And now he's retired and he spends his time playing pickleball and running the neighborhood HOA.
Well, I get that. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't fault him. And then my mom, she was a teacher, but she has MS. And so she was in and out of the hospital the whole time I was younger. So she didn't really have a job per se.
Oh, wow. Okay. So when you were in Cincinnati, when did your mom get MS in Cincinnati or diagnosed with it?
She actually got diagnosed when she was 21. So she had it even before she had my sister and I.
Wow.
So yeah. And so my sister's like almost 5 years younger than me. So after she would have one of us, then she would be in the hospital for like a year or two off and on. So
Wow. So she was really determined to have children, even with,
she was, yeah.
yeah. So what
Yeah.
drove that in her? Like, what did she tell you about that? Because that's a huge risk.
Yeah. I think she really wanted to have like a family and have kids. I think like she probably wanted a bigger family, but she definitely wanted to have, like a child and then have that child have a sibling. She's very big on, I feel the same way. I have two kids and like no one's going to understand how crazy like my children. So they need to be able to talk to each other about it.
Exactly.
So I think she felt the same way.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was determined to have kids, and they have her MS is fine now. It's it's manageable as it is. But we haven't had, they call them attacks when you have MS. So she hasn't been in the hospital for like 10 years, 15 years, knock on wood.
So she actually functions every day fine?
She does. She's in a wheelchair. She, she wouldn't, if my dad wasn't there, she wouldn't be able to like live independently, but
Right.
he's there.
Yeah. So what do you think you learned from her watching her growing up?
I mean, she definitely has a lot of grit, which I probably got. She definitely has, for better or worse, like I can do it. Don't help me. I've got it type of attitude, which I probably also have a little bit of. But I think she's just, steadfast and determined in her goals, and whatever she wants to do, if it's in her capacity, she'll do it.
Yeah. And I always, think those kind of stories, getting diagnosed with something like that at 21, you're either gonna, fall to it or say, I'm gonna still live life. I just can't imagine getting diagnosed at such an early age with it. And so what was her support system like, or why do you think she was so positive that she could overcome it?
Well, her parents, my grandparents were great. So they were very supportive. She has a sister, my aunt, who was really supportive. And then really my dad, he knew she had MS when they got married. He was just, very, very stunning, that lady.
Yeah.
Knew him, and he was in. He was in. It's been like 50 years. They're still together. So
when did they meet?
Yeah,
How
I
old were they?
They met like right before my mom, or when my mom was like ending college. So
okay.
they were
So
pretty
right
young.
when she was diagnosed. So he knew coming in.
Yeah.
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 Wow. That says a lot about your dad too.
It does. It
Yeah.
does. He's a great guy.
What do you think was
we could have a whole podcast on him.
Yeah. Well, I would like to get into it a little bit. So why do you think he took that on in his mind?
I think that he loved my mom and was probably like, I don't really know what I'm getting into, like a lot of people with basically anything in life, I don't think that he knew like the severity of the MS she would have, or that she would be, like in a wheelchair and blah, blah, blah. But I think he just loved her and was determined to make it work. And then, they had myself and my sister, and, you have children. So once you have kids, you're like, I'll do anything for my kids. So he's like, we'll just make it work.
Yeah. Yeah. So watching your dad do all of this, and I'm sure he had to take on more as well. What did you learn from him with all this?
I think I learned like, you kind of have to do what you have to do to get it done, right? Like whatever you're trying to do, whether it's like run a household, do your job, like whatever your objective is, you have to find, there's no error for failing, right? We're gonna succeed. But also looking back as an adult, I think he was so focused on just like raising us and getting, food for me to make dinner for my sister and like visiting my mom, that he didn't have as much time to like be more thoughtful on other things that I do have time to be more thoughtful on. So I think about that in balancing work and life.
Yeah.
To make sure I have time for each section.
Yeah. And so from your and your sister's perspective, did you have to take on more in the household, from a responsibility perspective, or was your dad really taking the brunt of it?
No. So I like when we were younger, I definitely took on more. I mean, which is helpful. Like I know how to cook, it's life skills, I do laundry. I can go grocery shopping. I could walk to like the grocery store and go get groceries, or walk to the mall from probably a younger age than I would let my children do that. But we also lived in Cincinnati versus Los Angeles. So there's a lot of factors. So I took on a lot more when I was younger. My sister, not so much, because she didn't need to, because I could do it. But now I live in Los Angeles. They live in Atlanta still. My sister's in North Carolina, which is so much closer. So now she takes on, like, if he had to go out of town for work, she would come stay with my mom and stuff like that.
Yeah. So when you were that age, what did you imagine you were going to be when you grew up?
I always thought I would be a lawyer. I think just because I liked to argue. Like, not really, just like picked a point and went after it, whether it made sense or not, just to see if I could win the argument. So I think I always thought I'd be a lawyer. Plus, when you're younger, when I was younger, there were like specific jobs that you would have, like lawyer, doctor, teacher, dentist. There wasn't like director of sales. Like, that wasn't something that they talked about in high school. Like, come be a director of sales.
Blockchain consultant. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Like, these things didn't exist or weren't widely discussed. So I thought I would do that. And then I went to college. And then, so when I was really young, I was like, I'll probably be a lawyer. I'll make a lot of money. I'll argue. It'll be great. Then as I got older, when I was in high school, I got into like yearbook, and I did the news for our school. Like, good morning, it's Lindsay. And I thought that was great. So I was like, for sure, I'll just be like on the Today Show. Like, that would be great for me. And then I went into college, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to be a journalist. And they were like, you're going to have to take 50 hours of writing classes. I was like, oh, I don't think I'm going to do that. That seems like a lot. So I switched quickly to marketing at a liberal arts school, which I realized is like kind of a choose your own adventure type of path. And then I just ended up in sales because, ever since I sold Girl Scout cookies, I was just really good at it. Everything's really sales. So I just kept going with it.
So moving in 8th grade, how was that experience? So I'm sure you had a lot of middle schools, just like such a crazy time, with just understanding who you are, trying to fit in. So what was that like to leave your friends and start a new place in 8th grade?
Yeah, it was not awesome, but, I think it was like a foundational point for the rest of my life. Because then when I was 22, I left and moved across the country by myself. And I just realized, like, you can always kind of start over, which is kind of a fun thing to do when you're going into high school. But I did have, I'd been in Cincinnati my whole life. So I had friends since kindergarten, and we all went to Air Elementary and then went to Anderson High School. And, we all went together. And then I had to move to Georgia, where they listened to country music, and some people had a little bit of a accent, and my grandfather said I talked too fast and no one would understand me.
Really?
I mean, they did understand. Yeah, but they did, and it was fine. But yeah, I mean, it was a little rough. I didn't know anybody. I wasn't like,
So how did you go about it?
Hot.
Like what kind of, approach did you take to meeting people?
I think I just kind of laid low back then, to be honest, and probably tried to fly under the radar, because I wasn't super like confident, teenager.
Yeah.
So I didn't have anything. I was just kind of like, I'm going to stay by myself. And then I would meet people in my class or meet people that at lunch or whatever. And then we would like gradually start hanging out. And I just kind of floated around friend groups until I found one that I like actually really liked the people.
Yeah.
It took a while.
And so your hobbies were really like in the news or getting involved with that as far as that in school.
Yeah, I did like choir in school. So
I did not know
I
that
did
about
that.
you.
Yeah, so I did choir. So I've met some people in there too and
Mhm.
whatever. But I wasn't like exceptionally sporty. I played soccer. I played tennis, but I wasn't great at any of them.
Yeah. So so you went to school in Atlanta, college?
I went to school and to college at Georgia College and State University in Milledgeville.
Okay. And so you ended up graduating in marketing.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So what was the transition between there and going to LA?
So I got a job after college because again, I'm always determined to make my own way. And so I got a job and I was leasing apartments for a giant apartment place in Atlanta called Post Properties. Um, and then I went on a trip with some of my sorority sisters to Las Vegas and I met my husband, my now husband, and we started dating kind of long distance. And then he was like, I'm going to move to LA. And I was like, sure, I'll move to LA. Sounds great. So I did, much to my dad's like dismay. I was like, I'm
Yeah.
going to move. Just going to get a U-Haul and I'm just going to move like on the 30th. And he was like,
Oh, trust me,
what?
after all the moves I've had lately, U-Haul's amazing.
Yeah. I was like, it's
I
great. I
mean,
got
it
a
is
hitch on
like,
the Jeep, hooked up the U-Haul. I could not back it up. So I could only get gas when you could pull through,
yeah.
but it worked out.
Yeah. So, what did you find the difference was when you got to LA?
From Georgia. It's very different. So, I was in Atlanta, but I was in a suburb. I was in Lawrenceville. It's like 45 minutes northeast. And then I went to college in a liberal arts college in Georgia with 5,000 kids. So literally you could like walk past and you pretty much knew almost everyone at school or had seen their face. And then I moved to LA where everything's expensive and there's a ton of people. And, at first they really care about things. And I didn't know to do any of that. So I don't know that I fit in right away. But what was lucky is that my then boyfriend, now husband, he had a friend whose girlfriend was moving out here. So we got an apartment together. And she was from Michigan. And she went to Michigan State with Kevin, my husband. And so we were both kind of like on the same page where we were kind of fish out of water, just trying to, again, like stay under the radar, but kind of figure out where we were going.
Mm-hmm. So have you seen yourself do that in other situations at work where you stayed under the radar to kind of get the lay of the land?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think every time you start a new sales position, you're just kind of like, let me see how I'm going to do here.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, like I think I've worked at like basically every back office accounting, like automation company you can work at, like Paychex, Thomson Reuters, all of them. I think when I went to Xero, because it was kind of like new and a little more like sexy and SaaS, and like there, I was just trying to figure out like what they were doing. Because I went from like a giant Thomson where everything's very corporate to like, here's the CEO.
Right.
Like, we're gonna have lunch.
And he's gonna come
so it's like a lot. Yeah, and he's gonna eat lunch with us, and it's gonna be great. So I think there I was just trying to, in every job, I'm really like for the first little bit trying to figure it out. It's a little different now at Bill and with this role because I've been here for over 5 years and I've been in sales here. and I've worked like cross-functionally with a lot of departments and a lot of teams. So I feel a little more, and I'm just a little more experienced and a little more confident. I've kind of built, I have a different approach to it than I did when I was, 22 moving to
So
LA.
what would be the difference now? Like, what have you learned to do different?
Well, one, I think surrounding myself with, a good group of people like you, like, that I can like bounce ideas off of, not even just inside the corporation, but just like my network of people has gotten so wide. And I think that the nice thing about, the time at Xero is I think we like, or realize that was a time when I realized like we're not all working against each other, because often in sales you are, right? It's all quota driven and it's who's the best. And it still was that, like you still want to be the best, or I do. But it's also like we can all support each other. We're working towards this common goal. And so that kind of changed my outlook or my perspective.
Yeah.
It's not as dog eat dog. It's more like let's all work together to achieve the goal that we're trying to achieve.
Well, and I think it, because I came from a larger company when we were starting up Xero at the time in the US. And one of the things that, like, when you talk about that teamwork and so forth that you hadn't experienced before, it was like going after something together that no one's ever done before. And it was almost like a movement, right? Like everyone had a belief in why we were doing it. It was exciting. There was something to go after that, we thought would be different. And so when you have like-minded people and all those functions, it's a very different experience. And then how that affects you later, of what things you try to pick out in your roles later to make sure that you can still have that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that but that whole like experience and that shift of like, we're all going after this together has kind of stayed with me, because now I'm not, now I'm at Bill and we're going after the, like, just kind of helping SMBs in general. And, I work with accounting firms to help their clients, but helping them just run their back office a little cleaner and smoother. But it's still the same kind of movement, because you have these firms, some are really nimble and they're looking for new technology, and some are like niched and they're only working with like a nonprofit, and everyone can still kind of work together and bounce ideas off each other. And so it seems like a very collaborative, like almost community that I've fallen into.
Yeah.
And so I feel kind of lucky.
Yeah. And I think that is, a misnomer about, there's always going to be the people that are in sales just for the number, right? Like there's just people made for that. But I think it's important, to realize purpose behind selling, and even for accountants that are selling to clients and other professions that are selling to clients, that it doesn't feel like a hardcore sale. There's still the excitement of closing a sale from a personal perspective. Yeah. But when everyone understands the purpose behind why you're doing it and what you're trying to solve, that is the difference between like when someone looks at it as car sales versus, purpose driven.
Right. I mean, I think at the end of the day, you're like, what's your problem? Like, what are we trying to solve for? And then let's work backwards from there. Like, in a perfect world, what would it look like? And it, it could be, hopefully it's what I'm pitching, but it might not be. And that's okay too, Right. It's just, if we can find that out sooner than later, that's more advantageous for everybody.
Well, and I think it also would be important to talk about from a sales perspective, the no's. So how did you learn to deal with rejection getting into sales as well? And how did you overcome that?
So I think like at first, as a younger salesperson, you kind of take it personally. Like, why wouldn't you buy what I'm selling? Or was it me? Or, whatever. Why would you buy it from that person and not from me? But really now, um, it's hard because it's like in selling to accountants, it's so hard to get a no. I would love a no. It's like a not yet, maybe later, soon. And it's just like, so it's really now working with, with a firm that we're talking to say like, when are you going to do this? Because there's different points people are at in solving the problem. Do we want a solution to the problem? Or are we in the point where we just want to like kind of tell everybody about our problem and just like be in the problem?
Yeah.
So we got to figure out which
that.
point we're at.
Yeah. So I just want to like kind of, because I think this is something that people spin on the maybes. And when, a lot of times in sales, people talk about the no's to get the yes, but what about all the time you're wasting on maybes? And what
Right.
do you what do you do in that maybe bucket to scope a maybe bucket? And this is for anyone that is dealing in a relationship sale perspective, so that you can drive someone to get the yes or quickly get out because they're spinning.
I think for me, what's worked is setting just clear objectives. Like, hey, this is my goal for this meeting, this relationship, this call, whatever. This is what I would like to do. What do you want to do? And let's figure out if, we can make that work together. And if we can't, that's fine. And it doesn't have to be that we'll never talk again, but maybe we won't talk again for a year because you're not ready to do that. But I think just letting people know that I think also having the confidence to say, it's not a right fit. You're not ready. I would love to help you and I will help you when you're ready, but you're not ready yet. And then I think a lot of firms appreciate that.
Yeah.
Because no one ever wants to tell you no, but really as a salesperson, you just want a yes or a no. Anything else is not helpful. Right.
Well, and it's wasting time, right? There's plenty of times you and I were spending on stuff, when we were working together. And I think it's an important part of the learning process of, I think a lot of times in sales, people do not feel like they can actually say what you said is like, as a salesperson, this is our objective for being here and what we want to have out of it. And by when. If you can't do it by when, let's now schedule we'll come check up in 6 months, in a year, or whatever, like, does this align? And I think that's really important. Yeah. So what do you think now? Because, you've grown from an individual contributor to managing people. So when you're moving from that thought process of like, I want to do well and I want to meet my numbers, to the team meeting their numbers, how have you had to change or break some patterns that you've had individually in order to do that?
So it's funny because I feel like I haven't wanted to manage people or hadn't wanted to manage people for so long because I wanted to have like, if you're an individual contributor, you have autonomy. You can do whatever you want as long as you do it well. Now that I have kids, I'm like, I'm managing a bunch of people anyway.
Yeah.
I should do that more often. I think that the shift for me and what I had to change was, I can only get so far as an individual contributor, and I can only like move the needle at Bill so much and talk to so many firms. Like there's only 40 maybe max that I can have like a real relationship with on some level in that, scope of sales. And now I can get a little more information on like a larger breadth of firms and the industry as a whole. And then I can kind of, help the reps on my team look at their job from a different way. Because I think the way I've always sold is a little more direct and a little less actually salesy. Like I just want to make it work for everybody, but very pointed with, as we said before, like time and when we're all looking to do these steps. so I think it was just an opportunity to hopefully, learn good habits from some of the other reps that have been on the team for a long time, and then share, my perspective that's worked well.
Well, and I think too, just going back to you growing up in laying low, in sales, I think that's an underrated quality, because a lot of salespeople just want to tell you what they sell and force themselves on you and keep talking. And one of the biggest things that you can do is listen and watch.
Yeah. Yeah.
To know if someone's the right fit, to know that you can actually deliver the right product or service. So that skill in itself is a superpower in sales that I don't think people realize, because they expect a salesperson to be extroverted over the top and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah. Like kind of shoving things down your throat. I remember one time when I started at Paychecks, I was selling like 401k, TPA services, and I didn't know anything obviously about 401k. So I went out on like a call with the manager, and I remember him, like we were sitting in a meeting with an auto body shop, and he probably said like 5 words and then just kind of slid the tablet towards the guy and he just signed. And I was like, what just happened here? Like, you didn't even talk. And he's like, no, I listened. Like I listened. And then the things that I said were thoughtful. Like I chose the words I needed to say. And that kind of stuck with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Choosing your words carefully. And to know that like when someone is talking to you, they want to know you heard them. So
Correct.
if you're going to speak, it should be in reference to what they say, right? So how do you practice that with your team if that's not a natural trait?
So now it's great because we have so much, technology that can automate this. So we can like record all of our, like any calls we have are recorded, like truly for coaching and training and stuff like that. So we can listen, and we are constantly having, discussions and trainings on like speed to answer, because I think that's really important to your point. Like if you email me and have a question, even if I don't know, just replying like, hey, I got this, I don't know, like I'll get back to you by Friday, I feel like makes people feel like at least you read it and saw it. But also being thoughtful and responsive and really like stopping to listen to what the customer's saying. So more of the conversations I have with my team are about why. I'm always asking why and quantify, like the things I tell them to bring to me. Like, don't tell me a problem without telling me how much time it's taking this person, or how much money it's costing them, or how many projects they can't do because they're trying to figure this out. Like, I need to be able to quantify like the pain or the problem to be able to tell if we have a solution.
Yeah. And, I train accountants on this all the time, but the biggest thing is this is actually an advisory and a consulting skill. Just people don't see it that way. Like sales training is the best way to become a really good advisor, because, you've got to prepare, you've got to listen and take all that information together in order to propose a solution. You can't just come in and say, well, this is what we got,
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to have a solution. Like, you can't just say like, oh, you got a problem.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. You should find someone to fix that. Like, you have to be able to help fix it, or else why are you talking?
Right. Well, and just like you said, and if you don't have the solution, you can be just as valuable and memorable, not rememberable, but memorable, when you provided the right person for them to go to. So when they need you again, they're going to come back to you.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of the conversations I have are just about automating like everything. And a lot of that is outside. Once we have, like, the payments piece is easy, right? It's just one portion of it. So once we can get that automated, then we can go into like GL and everything we used to do. So it's like, that's not what I sell, but I can point you in the right direction of someone to talk to.
Yeah. So, how have you seen, like, as you've grown and evolved, in your roles at work? How has the changes you've made in yourself affected the people around you, whether it be at home or at work? What have you seen?
I think I'm very like cognizant of time now. I have a 4 and a 6-year-old and a husband. All those people that I'm running their lives to. But I'm very cognizant of and on my calendar, there's pickup, drop off. Probably because my mom and dad couldn't be there when I was younger to pick me up at school or bring me to after school activities or any of that. I really want to give that to my kids. So I try to make sure that I'm utilizing the time in my day, very, very efficiently so that I can still do all those other things that I want to do, be room mom and, be at flag football practice and whatnot. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that's changed. Is just, I used to just work all the time. It didn't matter. I didn't have anything else to do.
Yes.
And now I'm I can work in the early morning and then, 9 to 4, and then I can email you back at 8:30 if you need something. But other than that, I'm pretty much offline.
And do you let people know that?
Yeah, I do. As soon, the first meeting, I'm let me just tell you a little bit about my life at home and what my schedule is. And they appreciate it because everyone has that, right? We've moved to this work from home environment and everyone's multitasking and everyone has a ton of stuff to do. So I think it's good to know if you need something urgently from me at 6 o'clock on a weekday, you're going to have to text me or call myself, but probably text is faster. And then that's how I'll answer you. And then they know.
Right. Yeah. That upfront communication is so important. Just like you said, just saying when you're going to respond, but also being proactive of what to expect so that when you don't respond, they don't take personal offense. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So many great lessons here. And I think, also just seeing the changes you've made in your life based on, how you grew up as well and what it taught you, is also inspiring. So thank you for sharing that. I'd like to close with just some rapid fire questions. So you pick a category, either family and friends, money, spiritual, or health.
Let's go health for 100.
Okay. Things or actions I don't have that I want to have with my health.
I would really like I would like to get more sleep. I already get a lot, but I'm really tired still when I wake up, but I'd like to get more. I'm pretty good at exercising, but I would, as I'm getting older, I feel like to get better at nutrition, supplements and, I'm in LA, so I'm reading Goop, but I don't know what I should take. I'd like somebody to give me a Cliff Notes guide of the vitamins and nutrients you should take. I would love it.
And then when I take it, I'm is this really good for me? I'm just not even sure.
I know. I have no idea.
They said to, but I don't know why I'm doing it. Yeah. All right. Things or actions I do have that I want to keep.
So ever since I've always been, and ever since I got married, I've been pretty active. And so ever since the pandemic though, I get up every day at 6 and I go work out in our back house with my husband. And so I want to keep doing that because it's kind of cheesy, but it's we do this together first thing in the morning and we can hold each other accountable. And if I don't work out first thing in the morning, I can actually tell throughout the day, I'm less patient. My brain doesn't run as quickly. So I do want to keep doing that. And then I was running a lot. I would like to get back into that, but that takes a lot of time. So it's a hard one to do.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right. And things or actions I don't have that I don't want to have.
Well, things that I don't do that I want to continue not doing.
Right.
Okay. So I'm pretty healthy during the week. So I want to keep doing that. I don't do anything really bad for me Monday to Thursday. so that I can run as fast as I run. I try to eat healthy and, not have a margarita or anything till Friday. So I'd like to keep doing that. And then also, this is the kind of work and kind of health, but I've been a lot more thoughtful about my travel and making sure that if I am going to travel, it's for a good reason. So I'd like to, to keep that going, not travel when it's not necessary.
Yeah, like that a lot. And then last one, things or actions that I do have that I don't want, that I want to stop.
That I do have that I want to stop. That's kind of a tricky one. I feel like I want to stop like being in the sun as much, but I'm like so cold always that I always want to be in the sun and warm. But coming back from Florida, everyone on my team was giving me like a little crap about being so tan. So it's always a dichotomy there of like, how much sun is too much sun in Southern California.
It feels so good though. Yeah.
I know. It's so relaxing and nice. Vitamin D.
I know. I'm like wearing like 70 now, but
I am too. I know. My dad at the beach, we just got back from a beach vacation last week and he had like 15 and we're like, what is this? This isn't even worth it. Like you need an 80 at minimum to reapply.
It doesn't repair though all the years of laying out with
gosh. If I could go back.
Yeah.
If I could go, I was a lifeguard in high school. Like if I could get those
too.
years back, I would do anything. I would do anything to get those years back and just put some sunscreen on.
Oh gosh, I know. So is there anything that we didn't talk about today that you want to make sure people leave with, and understand before we close out today's episode?
No, I mean, I just want to make sure people, if you have a question or need help or in this phase of like growing what we're kind of growing over here, which is kind of like a cast department, we're very happy to help you. I'm happy to help you. You can reach out to me however you'd like. But that's it. That's all we're trying to do is make, small businesses run faster at a mass scale through the accounting channel.
Yeah, awesome. So thank you so much for being on today and sharing your story. And I look forward to sharing this with our audience.
Thanks for having me.
And now for my mindful moments on this interview with Lindsay. Lindsay and I have known each other a long time. I always enjoy talking to Lindsay. She is not only super smart, but also a lot of fun to be around. And it was just great to get to know this other side of Lindsay and learn about her story. And I actually did not know about her parents and what they did to thrive during her upbringing. And she talked about that her mom had MS as she was growing up. Her mom was diagnosed at 21. And what she learned from her mom was seeing just the self-starter, really staying confident and knowing that she can accomplish what she needs to accomplish. She didn't ask for help. She wanted to try to do things on her own and got a heck of a lot support from her dad. The stories that Lindsay shared of really staying focused on how much he loved her and raising their daughters and how he was able to do that by balancing his work and life in order to make sure everyone was able to thrive. And just the example that was for her and now in her adulthood that she refers back to make sure she's doing the same things. And I think those are always great reminders that everybody has a story, and that story is so important to truly understand maybe why we do the things that we do, or we're so driven, or the examples that people gave us, so we can just have gratitude for that as well. And she also talked about that when her dad had a job change, they moved from Cincinnati to Atlanta. And that was a big learning experience for her at the time, that she learned that she was able to start over. It was a very hard time being in middle school when moving from Cincinnati to Atlanta. And one of the things that she learned during that move that I think is a really important skill that we might not realize we create in ourselves, but in every new situation that she's used it over and over again, is just laying low and flying under the radar to learn the environment that you're in and learn about the people around you to see where you fit, to see where you can actually enhance other people's lives, become friends, network, whatever that is. I think a lot of times there's many people that will just walk into the situation and try to force who they are and get offended if that doesn't fit. And in every new situation, whether it's a job, whether it's going to another state, country, whatever it is, people have their way of life. And we even find that in families, that even when you bring two people together as a couple, that everyone comes from a different background, different expectations. And it's important to take that time to really try to understand the environment you're in, how people interact, so that you can thrive in that situation and also make the best out of that situation as well. And so she found herself in that situation again when she met her husband in college and they decided to move to LA. There was, again, in that situation, it was so different coming from the Midwest going to LA that she didn't fit in right away and had to use that same skill of really trying to understand the environment and where she could find her path and the people that she related with as well. And we got into when we met, Lindsay and I met at Zero very early on in Zero, but her path getting there and really learning sales and how she became good at sales. And I think a lot of times when we talk about sales, many people feel that it's a forced thing or that someone doesn't want a salesperson around. And that's one thing to really understand, is that in sales, the biggest skill that you can have is the one that Lindsay is talking about, is laying low and learning your environment, learning the customers, learning how people interact, what's important to the business, what's important to your clients as well, so that you can solve for their pain points and you can get to the right solutions. And we really talked about how when you start out in sales, there's so much rejection or even maybes that you can take it personally, and how to really take that out of the equation, that it's not about you, it's about how you're solving someone's pain. And what she's learned over time is, especially in the maybes where you just can keep wasting a lot of time and hoping somebody is going to come to the end, is truly having that business discussion with any prospect, of setting the clear objectives, of making sure you're asking them what they want out of this, and you're very clear about what you want out of the relationship, and have the confidence to say when it's not a good fit or when someone isn't ready, or even having that discussion of when is it a good time to contact someone again. Not every person you talk to is the right fit. And I think a lot of times when I'm working with clients on sales, we get upset if people are saying no, or we're not, getting the success rate that we want. But if we are getting too many yeses, that means that we haven't really thought about our solution in the way that we should think about, priced it in the way that we should as well, and that we learn from the process to make sure that we do have the balance of no's and yeses, so that we keep striving for better solutions for our prospects and our clients. The other thing is that we also talked about how important it is during your career when you start pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. And one of the areas that she pushed herself out of was going from an individual contributor to a manager role in sales, and how she really for so long didn't want to manage people, but she really came to the shift in her life and realized that she can only get so far as an individual contributor. And she wanted to get more out of the organization as a whole. So she started learning and approaching sales and her work differently. And doing that, really had to lay low and listen again and learn from the people around her to make sure that she was doing things in the right way, because managing people and being an individual contributor is very different. And when you're managing people, one of the things that she talked about that was so important was how important it is to choose your words carefully. And when you're training salespeople is really looking at them and assessing, observing where their needs are, and making sure that when you're training them that they're thinking about how to be thoughtful, how to listen, how to make sure they're not answering right away. And this is, in any mindfulness discussion that I have or training that I have, is learning how to really be slow to respond. Because a lot of times when we respond too quickly, we respond in ways that later we're like, oh, I wish I would have said this, or I wish I hadn't said this, or I wish I wouldn't have interrupted. And so it's a skill that we have to practice. And part of practicing in business is actually going back and reviewing recordings, having meetings with your coworkers, or even if you don't have coworkers, your family, friends, and actually practicing with them to make sure that you are getting it down so that you feel comfortable in approaching a conversation in a different way. The other thing that was a key thing here that she learned from her father, who had so much on his plate with, taking care of her mom and both of his daughters, was really being cognizant of time, and that having that clear communication on your work-life boundaries, letting your team know, letting your clients know when you're available, when you're not available, and not breaking that. Making sure that you are communicating that up front and you're consistent with your communication on it, because if people forget, they might take it personally if you're not responding right away. So it's important to make sure that people are aware of it, when to expect responses, and that you uphold what you say that you're going to do as well. So I want to thank Lindsay for giving us these lessons during her interview. It was a very interesting life journey, and always excited to talk to Lindsay. Again, I want to thank Bill for sponsoring this episode. If you want to learn more about their accountant partner program, you can visit bill.com/4accountants. I want to thank you again for being a listener. And if this episode was important to you, make sure that you share it with the people that you care about, that it could help as well. And also, my audiobook is now out, Disconnect to Connect, Tap into the Power Within You to Create the Life You Desire. You can find it on Audible and be able to listen to it anywhere. Until next time. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. I hope you will take a moment to pause before entering back into your day to reflect on this podcast and note 1 to 2 actions you are inspired to do from today's conversation that you could incorporate into your life. To read the full blog and listen back to this episode or any other, you can find them at www.amyvetter.com/Breaking Beliefs podcast and related videos on my YouTube channel. For daily inspiration, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Amy Vetter CPA. I hope that you will choose to like this and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and more, so that you can join us for more inspiration on our next episode.